Thank you for joining us for the Dublin Vineyard podcast, and here is our latest sermon.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. This week we're starting a 2-week series called God's Rest and Calling. And it's about God's rest and calling in our daily lives. And these two things are, we often think of them as separate. For example, first I will find my calling, and then maybe one day God will give me rest. Or maybe I need rest now. And I'll talk more about what calling is. But wherever you are, I pray that the Lord speaks to your heart about his rest and calling. I know that he has spoken to me in preparation for the sermon. A lot of stuff the Lord has spoken to me in preparation for the sermon. But calling and rest are very interesting things in our journey with Jesus. Sometimes we think of them in that order, and I know that I have. And I said in preparation, the Lord was really talking to me about this. But what if we are getting this order wrong? What if Jesus flips these things around? That we're first to rest, and then God gives us calling. Not calling and then rest. Now think about that for a second. Think about, normally we would think, well, we got to do something to get rest. We don't rest, then do something. And when I'm talking about calling, I'm not talking about maybe God calling you to the other part of the planet or the end of the world. And maybe he is calling you to that. But the calling that he's calling us is every day to share who Jesus is, to heal the sick, feed the poor, and spread the gospel, the kingdom. Now, this may sound like a lot of work, right? But this is what listen to what Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. And it's a very powerful invitation. So in verse 28, he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." See, Jesus is saying, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. He's not saying come to me after you've figured it all out. Not come to me after you've sorted your spiritual life or cleaned up your bad habits or made yourself perfect. He's saying just come to me. If you're tired, worn down, feeling like you're not doing enough, that you're constantly struggling in your journey with him, to come and follow him. There's no need to prove that you're good enough. He's speaking directly to you. Come, follow me. See, in the kingdom, Jesus, he demonstrates to us that rest comes before the assignment, before the call. See, he's calling you and I right where we are. And I don't know about you, but, I grew up with the idea of this calling, God's calling is this really huge thing. And it is. I'm not trying to minimize it, but I'm saying, for example, maybe God, as I mentioned earlier, God's calling me to the other side of the world. And maybe he is calling you to the other side of the world, but maybe you think that's what it is. But then you say, well, what about rest? Where does the rest come in? Rest is something you earn after doing something amazing. It's a reward for good behavior or spiritual maturity. But that is not what Jesus is offering here. It's not a reward. It's a gift. It's paid by him, and he's just given it to us. See, this rest is not talking about, like, let's say, taking a nap or a vacation. And tell you what, a Sunday afternoon nap is really, really good. But this is not what he's talking about. And that may sound really good right now, vacation or a holiday. But he's talking about soul deep rest, from striving to be enough. It's the rest that recenters you, a rest that the world cannot provide. It's the rest that we only find in Jesus. A rest that does not depend on our performance, a rest of knowing that we are already loved. We do not have to earn it. This is an amazing thing, is it not? I know that I strive out of my own strength to do things in his kingdom and end up exhausted. I'm reading this book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And he states in there, he says, if the devil cannot make you sin, he makes you busy. Think about that. And during the week, Melissa and I were talking about busy. What does busy mean? That word, it could be subjective if you think about that, right? And we're all busy, right? We're all busy. We do too much, and everyone is different. And we're just maybe, if you think about what is too busy, saying, okay, well, we're busy, but what's too busy? Well, if you're too busy to spend time with family, to rest, to spend time with the Lord. See, we're made for more than just being busy. So you may be thinking, James, what is this rest about? What are you talking about? So as you guys know, I love my points, and I'm going to do 3 points this morning. Hopefully this will allow Jesus to reframe our way of how we think about rest, not as some reward we will get someday, but as one that we can walk in right now. Rest is where his calling begins, not where it ends. So let's listen to Jesus' words again. Come to me. So my first point is that the heavy yoke that we wear. See, Jesus begins his invitation not by giving us something to do, but by asking to let go of something we already carry. See, Jesus is saying, come to me. He's not saying work harder, do more. He's saying, take my yoke upon you. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Who is he talking to? Who is Jesus talking to? He's talking to everyday people like you and me. So now if you think about what is a yoke? He's saying my yoke is easy, my burden is light. So what's a yoke, right? Well, in Ireland, of course, a yoke can mean many different things. And that, of course, is not what Jesus is talking about. A yoke is really not something that we hear or really hear about much these days, unless you're working with farm animals, oxes or oxen on a farm. But in Jesus' world, it meant a very specific thing. See, Jesus was a rabbi, and rabbis have a way of interpreting the law. So the law is like the 10 Commandments. And so they would have a way of interpreting that, and that interpretation was called a yoke. So Jesus' way of interpreting that is a yoke of the commandments, of the law. And the thing is that we are carrying our yokes every day, maybe yokes of perfectionism, of people pleasing. And I know this is not an exhaustive list. There's much, much more. And Jesus knows this. See, he saw the people back then, like he does now, weighed down by rules and comparisons, shame, and constant feelings of we're just not doing enough. I know I feel that way a lot. I wouldn't say all the time, but not all the time, but a lot. More often than I should. And maybe you feel that same way I do. It's like no matter how hard I try, it never feels like I'm doing enough. There are not enough hours in the day. There's not enough days in the week. And Jesus is offering us an entirely different kind of yoke. One that does not pile on burdens or expectations, but removes them. One that actually fits us. Because he says, my yoke is easy. Not because life becomes effortless, but because it's in alignment with who he has created us to be. See, we cannot do this on our own. If we could, why would have Jesus had to come down from heaven and die for us? Because we can't do it on our own. It's not about striving to do more, but it's about walking with him at his pace, learning his daily rhythms of grace. To take on Jesus' yoke, we have to lay down our own yokes first. I mentioned the yokes that we carry already, as I mentioned, expectations of others and people pleasing and things like that. But what I'm saying here is that when we're doing this, we're wanting to let go of self-reliance. It means saying, I cannot do this on my own. Instead, we're going to lean on Jesus and how to live with a rested heart, even in a restless world. This does not mean that we don't do anything or do not do anything, but we rely on him to make the environment in which our lives, where he can do work. We lay down our yokes, we surrender. We cannot do it on our own. So think about this. What is the yoke that you are carrying right now that you don't need to carry, that Jesus never put on you? What yoke has the world put on you? And what does the yoke of Jesus look like in your everyday life? Is your yoke leaving you exhausted? Jesus saying, come to me. Let me carry that. Take mine instead. Lay down yours, because his yoke brings peace and rest. So now we go into the next point here. Grace is not earned. So let's lean more into Jesus' words here in a very powerful parable. that we can see grace more clearly. Now, this is going to offend some people. I know this is offensive to me in reading this, but let's read this together. So it's Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 through 16. This is the parable of the workers in the vineyard. So in verse 1, chapter 20, verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius. Let's say it's 100 euros. Don't know what a denarius is in today's money, but let's just say, for example. So he's offering them 100 euros for the day and sent them into his vineyard to work. And about 9 in the morning, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He said to them, "You also go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. He went out again around noon and 3 in the afternoon and did the same thing. About 5 in the afternoon, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing?" And they responded, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You will also go and work in my vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired, going on to the first." This is an interesting part. It says in verse 9, the workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came and each received a denarius. They got 100 euros. So when they came to who were hired first, they expected to receive more. I would expect to receive more, right? But each one of them also received 100 euros, a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. These who were hired last worked only 1 hour, they said, and you've made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the work in the heat of the day? But he answered one of them, "I am not being unfair to you, friend. Did you not agree to work for 100 euros? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Do I not have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous?" So the last will be first, and the first will be last. As we were reading that there, and I added some stuff, some of my own commentary to that as well, but you think about that. He hires the people throughout the day, some early, some late, and he pays them all the same. Naturally, the ones who worked longer, they feel cheated. I know I would be. It's like, this is not right. I would be really upset and say, this is not fair. But the landlord says, didn't you agree to this? Am I not allowed to be generous with others? Now think about this. Think about the early church in the beginning where many were martyred. Do they get more than us? Or do we get the same? Is that fair that we get the same? See, this parable disrupts our sense of fairness because we're used to getting or earning and getting everything that we've earned or our reward for what we get. We work and we are rewarded. But see, grace does not work like that. It is a gift. It is not fair. Grace is not fair. But grace is better than fair. See, we cannot earn it. Jesus is showing us that in his kingdom, it is not about how long you've been working in the vineyard. It's about the generosity of the master. And that's what he was trying to show us in this parable. It's not about the people that are upset. It's about the generosity of the master. So whether you've been following Jesus for 30 years or 30 minutes, the reward is the same. And that is shocking. But it is the full acceptance, full love, and full rest that we receive from the Lord. And when we live with the pressure to earn, we will never truly rest. And when we know that we are already fully loved, we're already fully welcomed, we can breathe, we can rest, we can stop striving. See, grace gives us the permission to stop striving for approval because we already have it in Jesus. As I said, grace is not fair, but grace is better. I did say that people would get offended, and that is offensive. But it's the way the kingdom works. It is his grace. It is his goodness. So now let's go to my third and final point. Rest from comparison. See, comparison is one of the fastest ways to lose your rest and joy, is it not? It's like running a race while constantly looking sideways. You lose your focus, you trip, and it wears you out. about 10 years ago, I did this half marathon, this Dublin marathon, and I was training on my own. And I was running, training for this half marathon. It was the rock and roll marathon here in Dublin. And the day before, they had a 5K run. And like I said, I was only training on my own. And then I decided to do this 5K run with others. And as we're doing this 5K run, there were people running next to me. And they're running faster. And I got competitive. I started comparing. So I had to say, I can run faster than that person, surely. So I started running and I tell you what, I wore myself out. The next day for the half marathon, it was a struggle. I was sore, it just wasn't good. And see, the thing is, that's exactly what happened with those workers, right? They were fine with the pay until they started comparing with others when they saw what others were getting. See, their comparison poisoned their joy. And I know as I mentioned before, when I compare myself to others, it steals my joy. I just mentioned the one about running, but there's been countless. Shouldn't I be further along? Look at this person. They just got saved. Shouldn't I be further than them? Shouldn't I be here? Shouldn't I be doing this or that? Why am I not that far along? I should be way further than where I am or than so-and-so. Have you ever felt that before, or is it just me? Seeing someone else get recognition or peace or answered prayer while you're still waiting, praying, struggling. You've done so much more than they have. Why do they get it? See, it's tempting to think that God loves them more than me, or that you're doing something wrong. But this is the important thing. As a mathematician, I really love this, is that God's love is not divided. His love is multiplied. He multiplies it. He doesn't divide it and say, it's not a finite thing, it's an infinite thing. See, God does not have favorite ones. And when we start comparing, we forget our own invitation. We forget our own journey. We forget the amazing beauty of what Jesus has done in our lives. But when we trust God's generosity, that it is enough for all of us, we can celebrate with others without losing our rest, our peace, our joy. There is enough of God's love, of God's grace for all of us. We do not have to be anyone else. We are not behind. Our story is not late. We are fully loved, and we can rest in that. We do not need to compare. We just need to rest in His love. So in conclusion, here's a simple but powerful truth. Jesus does not call us to strive for acceptance. He did not call us to work harder. He called us to come closer. Think about that for a second. He didn't call us to do more. He didn't say, hey, you lazy sod, you slacker. He said, come closer. He called us to rest. Not just rest from our own work, but from worry, from struggles, from life. Rest from performance, from comparison, from trying to be enough because you're already enough in Him. Of course, He does change us. He works in us. But right where we are. His calling starts with rest. So following Jesus begins with trusting Him. And before he ever sent disciples out, He said, come follow me. Come first. Rest first. Rest is not being lazy. It is fighting against the busyness and the broken world system that we live in. So this week, will we accept His invitation to rest? Will you accept and lay down yokes this week? Will you rest this week? Maybe that means just laying something down, saying no to something or someone. And I know that can be tough. I know I struggle with saying no. I feel bad. We should be able to say no. Right? Maybe it's just stepping out of the comparison game. Or just really believing that His grace is completely free and we don't have to earn it. See, He's not saying prove yourself. He's saying come to me. And that's where we are to begin. So this week, lay something down, say no, accept grace as it is actually a free thing, and step out of the comparison game. So next week, I'll be talking about calling. I look forward to seeing you guys next week, and we'll talk then. Let's have the worship band come up.
Thank you for joining us today. May the Lord's word strengthen and inspire you throughout the week, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. God bless.